Hey, what's up, Lightbolt Joe here. Today we are going to discuss Fast X. This is the 17th installment in our Fast and Furious franchise, and we're going to talk about how that's number 17, because most people forget that there's a TV show on Netflix, which has 6 seasons, and this is technically the 11th film. So 17, and people don't realize this, and this is so much info, so much canon, so much stuff. So I have a notebook, because I've been studying the Fast franchise for many years, over a decade, of info and notes on each season of Spy Racers, the TV show, of each film. So Fast X, May 19th, 23, directed by Louis Leterrier. I don't remember I think he directed like Now You See Me, and he did other action films. This is a good action film. So I gotta put the book down. Where am I throwing this book? Thrown. So this film, it took a long time to make. COVID-19 shut down a lot of productions in Hollywood. The last film, F9, was what, 2021? 2020? I don't remember when the last one came out, but there was so many seasons of Fast and Furious Spy Racers on Netflix, back to back to back, throughout the pandemic. So that was easier to make, obviously, because animators can work from home and send in the work together. Very different than doing a live action production than an animated production. So the Fast X takes off after Fast 9. So Jacob, John Cena's character, Jacob Toretto, the younger brother of Dom, older brother of Mia, is now in the mix. He's still an agent, more of a mercenary type. Helps out with Little Brian, right? Little Brian Toretto. And so it's now a matter of, since they're all living still in Los Angeles, that the house is now rebuilt and everything's kind of getting back to normal. Rita Ora comes in as Dom and Mia's and Jacob's grandmother, Little Brian's great-grandmother. Nice little heart-to-hearts with that. Dom's still reminiscing on his father's death, reconciliation with Jacob. And it's just a matter, it's still the family thing. I think someone counted, I think families said 56 times in this 2-hour and 20-long-minute film. A lot of family in this. But that's the point of this. It's a matter of recognizing the past, which brought you to the present, and then how the future can be. And a lot of people didn't like this film, saying that the plot made no sense, but the plot made a lot of sense. And what I find interesting is Justin Lin, who did Fast and Furious 3, 4, 5, and 6, directing-wise. He's the only director who directed the most Fast and Furious films. Then James Wan did 7. And then F. Gary Gray did 8, I believe. I don't remember who did 9. And Louis Leterrier just did 10. Who directed Hobbs and Shaw? I don't remember. Anyway, he has still a producer and a writer credit, Justin Lin, but he actually bowed out of directing this film due to creative differences. So I'm very curious how he still remained a writer when he bowed out as a director because of creative differences. But then there was a lot of rewrites that Lewis did. So I don't know. I don't know how that worked. I don't know what the behind the scenes is. But the plot that we were given makes a lot of sense. We actually get a timeline. We get a lot of surprise things at the end, which I was not ready for. And it's amazing to see this as a franchise as a whole, because it's a soap opera. If you're watching this and expecting just drag racing, stealing technology back in 2001 as the original The Fast and the Furious did, this is not that film. This is an evolution of the film. So much story, so many different characters, so many different plot points from around the world coincide into this franchise. This isn't a multiverse, this is a franchise. So the fact that the franchise has films in the core series, spin-off films, it has a spin-off TV series about Tony Toretto, which is Dom, Mia, and Jacob's younger cousin, and their spy racing stuff through the agency. The agency in the show brings a lot of, Black Ops, Black Site kind of locations, right? Black Site A is featured heavily in this particular film, where Cypher and Letty wind up together, which happens to be in Antarctica, A for Antarctica. So that whole little thing going on as well. But a lot of that Spy Racers kind of agency stuff was brought into this in full. Mr. Nobody has been missing, quote unquote. He might be dead. So Tessa's daughter is now in the mix, played by Brie Larson. You have Dante Reyes, who is the son of Herman Reyes, who is the big baddie of I was going to say season 5. It's like a TV series. Big baddie of, and I was just gonna say episode 5. My goodness, these films are not films. They're shows. They're operas. They are soap operas. Uh, the fifth. There we go. Fast Five. Okay. Fast Five, if I'm not mistaken, came out in 2015. There's this new character, Ames, who's now running the agency after Mr. Nobody's gone. And Little Nobody, Scott Eastwood is back as well. Ames references to Brie Larson's Tess Nobody that the events of Rio, with Brian and Dom stealing the vault with the rest of the crew, to get back at Herman Reyes to steal all his money. So he's just an awful human. So that's what they're doing. That took place in 2011. So we have a timestamp. Ames says street racing in 2001, humble roots, going then to 2011 when they steal the safe, steal the vault from Rio and cause chaos. So we have that actual time point. The film itself, I want to say Fast Five was 2015, if I'm not mistaken. No. 2011. Maybe that was 2011. Furious 7 was 2015. I don't know. I don't remember. There's just so much timelines in regards to that. I remember most things, but not all things. And that's the thing. It's that there's a lot to remember with these. It's like studying history. That a lot of the historical facts, right? You only need to know to take your multiple answer test. And that's what Fast and Furious became, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a TV series though, and there's just a lot of it's portrayed as a TV series, and there's just a lot of information that it's hard to retain over the what year is this? 23. So 22 years worth of film from 2001 to 2023. 22 years worth of a franchise within 17 different things. 6 seasons of a TV series, 10 episodes of 10 movies of the main canon, and then one spin-off show as of right now, spin-off movie, Hobbs and Shaw. Hobbs is getting another spin-off leading right into the second part of this film, because this ends on major cliffhangers. Things happen. So going back into this, Jason Momoa's character, Dante Reyes, wants revenge on Dom and family for causing him to suffer because of the chaos that they portrayed within Rio, the killing of his father, stuff on the bridge, stuff like that, right? So his quest now is to get Cypher's tech, right? Because she was the big baddie of the last 3 films. Wants her tech, wants her guys to then start the revenge and find Dom and get all the stuff going, right? So the infiltration of Cypher going to Dom and Letty for help. Scott Eastwood's character of Little Nobody taking her back to Black Ops space, Black Site A. And it's funny because he says she lost 6 pints of blood. Normal people die at 4. It's just these little one-liners, these clips throughout the film. It's just very entertaining. It's funny, but it was also heartfelt as well. You have the "See You Again" score playing behind when Dom's looking at a montage photo of everybody on the walls of the garage, stuff like that. Little B's 8 at this point, so time has passed within the canon of this, and teaching him how to drive in a parking lot, very adorable things. So the quest is, what happens when Cypher actually switches sides in regards to the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of aspect, which there's a little speech in that. Dante specifically says to Cypher, you want to destroy the world, or you want to control the world, I just want it to suffer. So it's a different kind of villainy. It's a different aspect. It's not world domination like Cypher wanted, which is not happening anymore. It's, I want you to suffer because you caused me to suffer. It's a good old revenge story. That's all that comes down to. But what happens? How are we traveling? So I actually wrote down the different locations on my hand because I was never going to remember it. So we're in Rio, we're in Los Angeles, we're in Rome, we're in Naples, we're in London, we're in Antarctica, and then we're in Portugal. I don't think it specifically says what city in Portugal. It's just the country of Portugal is referenced, because we're traveling through Portugal a lot. The big scene at the end with the dam explosion, cutting to black. What happens next? It's very cliffhanger. It's very end of season. Wait 6 months for the next season to begin, kind of a thing. But this is a film, so it takes a while. So we have to wait till the Hobbs movie comes out, and then we have to wait for the next movie to come out. So we'll see when all that comes together, when it all circumvents. So we meet Isabel in Rio. Isabel is Elena's sister. We meet, like I said, Tess, who is Mr. Nobody's daughter. We meet Dante, who is Herman Reyes' son. So what's neat about this film is that A lot of this goes back to the fifth film, whereas a lot of the previous films go back to the third film, which actually happened timeline-wise after the sixth film. So canon-wise, story-wise, we go 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 3, and then at the end of 3, we have Deckard Shaw exploding Han's car, but then it's revealed, right, within 7, 8, 9, that Han didn't die, that he was actually alive, and he was hired by Mr. Nobody because Mr. Nobody worked with Giselle, who then died at the end of 6, and Letty died at the end of, what, 4, 5, something like that? 4. So it's a matter of, if somebody dies, do they stay dead? The answer is no, they don't stay dead. And we know that because of Letty, we know that because of Han. And then having Han face Deckard in this, just in a, I actually need your help. I'm not here for revenge. I need your help. When certain crew goes to London, Pete Davidson's in this for half a second as a hacker, very entertaining, like scene, him as Bowie. So that was neat, having that reconciliation going back all the way to 2003, 20 years before, 2005. When did Tokyo Drift come out? That was the ending, when we have that, Dominic Toretto, you don't know me, but you're about to. And he explodes Han's car when in fact Han actually, was faking the death. And then Deckard sends that box at the end of the third, which is the beginning of the seventh, when he explodes the house, right? As revenge for how dare you destroy my brother Owen Shaw throughout the sixth film. So then that's where the plot comes together, right? Everything went back to the third film, but now everything's now going back to the fifth film. So this reminded me a lot of Saw, because the character of Dante Reyes is very maniacal, but very twisted, but he's also super flamboyant. And I really like that they have that kind of villainy character to it. It brought it back to that old school. You had very flamboyant villain characters back in the 60s and the 70s, and then they just faded away now that they're back. So it was neat having that again. Of course, it's a stereotype that needs to change in regards to flamboyancy doesn't equate to villainy, but it was a neat little throwback. So I appreciated the throwback aspect. I do want other, I would love other flamboyant characters within this. We have a lot of, very black and white kind of gender rolled characters within this franchise, but this is a worldwide franchise. Obviously, there's other genders represented throughout other countries, so we're slowly going into that. Jason Momoa's character of Dante has a very odd conversation with 2 dead guys that he killed, but he props them up. He's wearing a pink bathrobe, and he's like this, and he's talking like that, and he says, I'm wearing pink, it brings down the masculinity, I think we all need that now. And it was just funny because he's got painted nails, so it's a different representation that's important moving forward. I would have appreciated the representation within a protagonist, not an antagonist, but you can't win them all. So baby steps, slow and steady. Very good character design, though, because he just wants revenge, and we get that backstory. He's been in and out of these mental hospitals, because of problems with his dad, because of problems with his mom. What is he going to do next? If he's got the keys to the kingdom after his dad died in Rio, how does he work forward? And then you have this character of Ames, who's one of the agency workers who's actually been working with him the entire time. So it's another neat little, can't trust everybody kind of a thing. And then at the very end, when Letty and Cypher are leaving Antarctica with the stolen sub that they got from the 8th film, who's driving it? But Giselle. It's now a matter of, just because somebody dies in the films, because Giselle died, she fell into the runway at the end of the 6th film, and then that's what led Han to Tokyo. That's what led Han on that, Han's story. Han went to Tokyo because Giselle died. So what happens when they meet again? And how was Giselle alive this entire time? How has Giselle been working with Cypher? Dwayne Johnson back as Hobbs. He said he was never going to be Hobbs again, but he's back as Hobbs. So how does that come into play? Dante is very keen on taking someone's family as a hostage in revenge and suffering for that particular person. So because Dom and Brian, and it was so great seeing Paul in archival footage back on the screen, kind of a thing, with them taking the safe out at within the 5th film, which is the beginning of this film, what happens behind the scenes in the police station while that's happening. So that's what that little origin is. But Ames is actually working with Herman Reyes and Dante while this was happening, tricked everybody, went back into fruition. But Brian's car was taken off of the gable, that Dom was going to be the only one with the vault as Brian went away on the bridge to safety. So Dom's car is the one who caused the vault to then smack into Herman Reyes' car, which also happened to be next to Dante. Dante flew into the river, which we didn't see obviously in the fifth film. This was added in, but I like that. I like when we had the side story of the actual main story from years ago brought into fruition again. But Dom didn't technically kill Herman Reyes. Hobbs killed Herman Reyes. He shoots him twice, on the bridge as he's walking over to Dom, saying, all right, well, what happens next? And that has the very beautiful ending of the fifth film. So, now that Hobbs is back within a post-credit scene, and we know he has a daughter because of previous Fast and Furious franchise installments, did Dante take Hobbs' daughter? So there's a lot of questions. What happens to Tej, Roman, Ramsey, and Han when their plane goes down, right? What happens in Portugal? What happens to Dom and Little B when the dam explodes, right? What happened to Giselle all these years later, right? Things, right? So what's really cool about this, that it's been 22 years worth of a franchise, is you can keep adding characters who have association with somebody. It's not just a street racing film taking place in Los Angeles. It's not that anymore. It's so massive. It's so massive. The story is so massive because it's a worldwide franchise. That's why I think this film just crossed the 7 billion mark globally within the box office. It's just such an incredible franchise with an amazing interwoven story. And it's a soap opera. It's not a street racing film. 22 years later, it's a story. It's a franchise saga. So that's why it's called the Fast Saga. So we've talked many minutes about this film, how incredible it was. I'm very curious what Justin Lin's original script would have been versus Louis Leterrier's rewrites were. But I really liked this film, and I know a lot of people kept complaining it's too much info, blah blah blah, it's not my original film. Obviously it's not your original film. This is 22 years later. This has been 2 decades worth of film. You have to add more story. You have to add more characters if you're continuing on the franchise. What I also love about this is that they're setting it up for the next generation, a la Avengers passing the torch to the young Avengers. So whenever that film comes out, I'm very excited. But I'm very curious when the spy racer characters, right, who are teenagers, come into play live action wise. Is Little B going to be joining up with Tony Toretto at some point, leading on the spy racer aspect? When are the kids going to take the torch from the grown-ups? Very interesting how it was laid out, very briefly, saying, we have to pass it on to the kids, kind of a thing, moving forward. When are we going to get Mia and Brian's kids into the plot points? Because we had little Brian, Little B, who they just kept screaming B. It reminded me so much of Transformers throughout the entire time, especially because of the explosions in cars. But it's a Universal film, so makes sense. When are we going to have those kids come into play? Brian with his cousins, little Brian, Little B with his cousins. I'm excited. I'm very excited. When are we going to see? There's so many things we can do. We can have Han and Giselle having a secret child that Han didn't know about because Giselle was missing for all these years. What's that kid up to? Oh, bro, we could do so many things with this. I'm very excited. Very excited to see what happens next. Very excited that I watched Spy Racers on Netflix because it all makes sense. It's all an interwoven story. It's all connected. It's worldwide. It's supposed to be crazy. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to make sense. Of course, physics and gravity don't make sense, and they make fun of that. But the soap opera story of it makes sense. And that's all that matters. On to the next review. Mucho mahalo.